Hi, so I'm just going to do a little introduction to myself, Valerie Jaeger from Full Circle Schooling and now the Unschool Classroom. And I'm standing in front of basically just a few things that I put up recently. There's a lot of space to grow, but those are my two kiddos, Jalen and Jacob, and I talk about them quite a bit. And here is where I teach class. I'm pretty obsessed with brain development and child development. So back here, I've got my mindset poster and I've got, left brain, right brain, and my chalkboard, or actually whiteboard. And I'm really excited to teach classes with kids, but this is to introduce you to myself. So let's see. I've been in education for a total of about maybe 18 years now. I haven't really counted recently. I started though, I was 22 and I'm 44 now. So it was a long time ago, half my life ago. Yeah. So I started not with the intention of being a teacher. I needed a job. I needed to quit one job. I was in art school at Academy of Art in San Francisco, and I needed a new job, and I was looking through the newspaper at that time, the classified section. I wasn't online, and I found an ad to be an after-school teacher part-time at a rec center, and I answered, and it was for children with disabilities, severe disabilities, from all spectrums of autism to Down syndrome to completely paralyzed from the neck down in a wheelchair. There was quite a bit. And the age group was 5 to 12 years old. And when I applied, I did not qualify. I had no experience and I had no education. I didn't even really have an interest until I actually applied. And then a light bulb kind of went off inside of me that this could be really, really great for me. I really want to do this. I was just immediately attracted to the position and working in this organization. Well, because I had no qualifications at all, they didn't respond and I kept pressing, just give me a chance, give me a chance. I showed up, I think 3 times. Hey, just checking on, what you think of my application and if I can have an interview. And so because of my persistence, they gave me an interview and, I got the job. They basically took a chance on me, and this is not the first time others have taken a chance on me due to no qualifications. So I got the job, and it was extremely challenging. I cried every day for my first month, and I cried almost every day for 6 months. It was just a really challenging job. And part of what made it so challenging for me personally is because I dove in with my whole heart. I knew pretty much on day one that this was it for me. This was my passion in life. This was my calling. I was naturally very good at working with kids. And now I can say, because I didn't understand what intuition was back then, but there was just this intuition inside of me that I just knew what to do. So I was hired as an assistant teacher on a 30-day, how do you say it when you get a new job? Probation period. 30-day probation period, an assistant to the lead teacher who also had an assistant. So there were 2 of us. And the age group was 5 to 12 years old. They all had different disabilities, and it was after school 3 to 6. So they would come in from the bus and, we led classes and took field trips. Within 1 month, the director promoted me to lead teacher of this class. And I stayed there for 2 years. And the rest is history. After that, I decided to take classes and learn how to be a teacher and what that actually meant in the world of education, getting credentials and things like that. When I left there, I left because I could no longer afford to live on the income that was provided me. It's so sad in the world of education, right? Teachers don't get paid what they should be getting paid. And it felt like a natural time to transition and expand. The director of that program, gosh, he was director for 30 years. There was actually 3 directors of this program. It was a pretty big program. This director said, Valerie, you are the Michael Jordan of education. I knew when you started working here, you were very naturally gifted and talented to work with kids, including of this caliber. So that was quite an honor to receive from this particular person. And it ended that chapter in my life in a very extraordinary way. So in a nutshell, what happened after that is I did have my 2 little kiddos, and I was in and out of different jobs, and I was in and out of classes, and then I started subbing when I was pregnant. So I got my hands into the Montessori group, play-based groups, and I started learning about preschool and early education. I loved it. I loved it so much, and I decided to stay in early education when I really learned about human development and brain development. This is when I learned that you can make the biggest impact in a person's life when you are present with them at the very early years. The younger the child, from 0 to 3 and then 4 and then up to about 8, that is when you can make the biggest impression. So I just felt really honored to be a preschool teacher, and to me it was like becoming a physicist. It was like earning my PhD. It was like a big deal in my head that is when you can make the biggest impact on a person's life. That was huge for me. I quickly found out that's not how the world views preschool teachers in general. They certainly don't get paid to match what they do. But it's okay. My focus has always been on the children. And so I was really honored to stay within the early years, and definitely excited to close the door to further education as far as getting my degrees. I knew that would advance me as far as making more money and possibly a little bit more opportunities. But I don't like school. I never did. I don't like learning anything that I'm not really interested in an experiential way. So it's very challenging for me to focus on something that doesn't mean something to me now. So I was so happy to see my career unfold in front of me without any further education, which was challenging for some of the schools that I worked for, because part of being a teacher is you're kind of required to continue to go to school. So I think furthering my education meant something to me in a more personal way. My research and my studies and my online courses and the classes that I want to take need to impact who I am with kids now. Not for a degree or because you're telling me to take this class. So anyway, school has always been a bumpy road. I had the honor and privilege to yet again stumble upon a job that I was not qualified for on paper. And the amazing director, who should be world renowned, and in some ways should be a household name, but doesn't like attention. She's amazing. She's so gifted and intuitive and amazing at her job. She started a preschool in San Francisco, and I was very fortunate enough to catch her intuitive side. She looked in my eyes and believed that there was something inside of me that belonged in her preschool. Again, I wasn't really qualified on paper. I had some experience, but not much. And only a few classes up my sleeve. So she took a chance on me. And for 8 years, I worked at a preschool that I would have retired at. I mean, that was my plan. I loved it so much, and it really shaped my view of what a preschool teacher, is actually. I didn't work at any other school full time except for with the children with disabilities, the after school program. And it really shaped who I was as an educator, and working with that staff, that community, and especially the director shaped me into the educator I became at the end of my 8 years there. And it was so much like getting my PhD or master's. I mean, that's how it feels. I know if you've gotten your PhD or master's degree or even bachelor's degree, you probably are laughing at me right now. But if you know more about my story, you know that I'm very passionate about deschooling. And deschooling is a process that you go through when you unhinge yourself from the school system and coercive learning and behavior modification. So if a person has gone through the school system and earned their bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, all these things, well, I mean, that's amazing, and I honor anybody who has put in that time and effort, and there is so many pros to that, but one of the cons, if you will, is that you're at a capacity for how much more you can take in experientially. So what I mean is, this director, after a few years, saw me unfold naturally as an educator that's kind of ideal in her eyes. And one of the things that she accredited that to is because I didn't go to school. So basically, I didn't have to unlearn and undo things that stand in the way of being a gifted educator and an intuitive teacher. So it was an amazing 8 years. What happened was I had to move out of the county. So that was one of the hardest things I ever went through because I loved being there so much, but I did have to move. So what happened next is really what led me to who I am today and who I've been for the past 6 years. I had to get a job, and I put my kids in school. We found a private school where I can teach pre-K and actually transitional kindergarten, and my kids went to that school too. Well, that was the year I discovered what most preschools are like and what it's like for most preschool teachers. It's a lot like clock in and clock out, and it's mass production. It's more assembly line. And I didn't experience that for 8 years. Where I came from, it was really challenging, but highly rewarding. I cried a lot. I grew a lot. And we were in constant communication with each other as staff about the children, where they're at in life, any traumatic events that have happened, where they're at in their development and education, what are the goals? I mean, children change and grow and develop so fast, and they also are easily imprinted upon, and they bring those imprints with them, and sometimes they're not so pretty. So it's very therapeutic to provide such an individualized experience for the child, but it is really challenging, and you're very invested. A lot of energy goes into teaching in this capacity. So at first, when I taught at a more typical school, it was like a mini vacation, to be honest, because, I was pretty shocked to see that this huge staff of teachers, they just follow a system. They just follow what they do at 8 a.m., 8:30, 9, 10, and they just make all the kids fall in line. Now, because in the beginning of the school year, children are really excited to start school, especially at that age, 4 and 5 years old. They're so excited. They feel like they're growing up and they're getting prepared for kindergarten. So in the beginning, it's like a honeymoon phase. I'm like, wow, teaching in a big school, like, wow, this is so easy, and I was making friends and it was fun. Well, that wore off simultaneously with how the honeymoon phase wore off for the children. What happened after just a few months was more and more heartbreaking. I needed to get back involved in being on the child's level and individual. So how many students I had? Maybe 24. And the further the school year grew on, the more we had to make these children into kindergartners in a way that was fitting for their kindergarten class. So, sit a certain way, talk a certain way, look and behave a certain way, follow these rules, know these things at this pace. Oh, you're done? Well, you still have to wait for the rest. Oh, you don't know how to do this? Well, we need to take time out of recess to make sure you catch up with the rest of the class. It's all about assembly line teaching and being with the children, and it was hard for me. I just didn't like being at work anymore because I really couldn't be myself. I couldn't be who I naturally was as an educator. So the last month of school, I decided this would be my last year of teaching, and it was very heartbreaking the last couple of months because what I saw in the children's eyes compared to the beginning of the school year was really heartbreaking. And I often say, I just saw the lights turn off. I just saw them, just phase out a lot because now they were conditioned to wait. Now they were conditioned to not eat when they were hungry or eat even when they weren't hungry. Now they're conditioned to pay attention in circle time even when they're bored, so they don't show it. So what they do show is just a glaze. They're checked out. Their body is here. Their body is still, but they're thinking of what they're going to do after school probably. Now at this age, the trouble is they can't articulate these things. So they come home excited because they're happy to be with you and they remember the good parts of school. And usually what they remember is a sticker on the board for good behavior or extra playtime because they did something nice. Or of course, friends with stories that are short-lived because social time in school is the worst. It's very short-lived. It's sardine canned in a way. Grouped by age. You don't know how to interact with the other ages. It's not natural. It's horrible. But you get the good parts. And there's school plays to look forward to and school pictures and science night and all these fluffy things that make parents believe that school is working, that school is good for their child. And the reason why is because the child cannot articulate the whole download. They're not intellectually processing, they're processing on a developmental level, which is worse because it's making an imprint on who they are. It's almost like it's disrupting their DNA, and maybe it actually is. I do know it's a huge hindrance, and I do know that children cannot come home and tell their parents, Mom, kindergarten, most of it I find is just a waste of time, and I know intuitively I'm not going to use most of this stuff as an adult. In fact, it would be wiser if I learned things that would help me develop now. And the best thing is when I feel interested in what I'm learning and I'm experiencing it and I'm happy and having fun. Mom, it would be so much better if I was in a group of all kinds of ages and people and we had enough free time to work through social issues on our own. I mean, my list can go on and on of what would be better. So I just knew that I couldn't do it anymore. It was too heartbreaking. And the hardest day of my life, one of them, is basically the last day. I cried and cried secretly because I couldn't take all those little kids with me. And I knew they were being shuffled along into the next grade, and that was going to be their life. Then it would be shuffled into first grade, and then it would be shuffled into second grade, and it just continues on and on. So what I did is I got my kids out, and I'll save those two stories for another time. And I started Full Circle Family. It wasn't called that at first, but basically I just offered to teach kids out of my home in order to replace my income. So I turned my home into a classroom basically and had some incredible years. It was called East Bay Homeschool. Full Circle Family was kind of the the vision was an umbrella company evolving and community evolving. And that's when I launched the Facebook group and page. And so it has been different just about every year. And we had the Explorers group where I got a 15-passenger van, and basically community was our classroom for 2 years, going on 3. That was so fun and evolved my thinking of child development in higher minded ways. Like, I really should write a book on what happens to children when they're set free in public within a safe boundary that is known but not viewed. So when you take away the fences, like a school playground, when you take that away and you entrust children to go about publicly in a group setting, wow, the psychology of who they think they are changes. And it was absolutely phenomenal and fascinating. If I could just take a year to just think about that and what happened and put it together in a book, it would be pretty cool. So I've got a lot of experience in starting new things with different ages and mixed ages. At East Bay Homeschool at one point, I had all ages from 4 to 18 years old. And it was absolutely beautiful. So some of the resources I like to pass on to parents is go Google Sudbury schools and democratic schools and agile learning centers and Acton academies, and get familiar and comfortable with self-directed learning, unschooling. It's different than project-based approach. It's different than child-centered learning. Those terms are so overused at this point that they just attract a certain people, but the teachers might be doing whatever they want. Montessori to me is outdated. Aspects of Waldorf is very outdated. We are evolving, and especially now in 2020 with what's happening, things are changing very fast, too fast, and I don't think it's going to slow down. So now what I'm offering is the Unschool Classroom, where I take my unschooling experience and philosophy and resources to the online platform as much as I possibly can. Now, teaching a group of kids online has its limits to being as authentic and true to the name of unschooling, which is unschooling in its purest form. To me, really is living an education is woven in and out so much, and it's so experiential and involved with community and parents that it's kind of one and the same. The unschool family can typically find themselves detached from the word school and education because life just naturally gives those experiences, and it works so great for the family who has a parent or family member who's really involved and there's a lot of diversity going on. It's a great environment for children is when there's many options, from physical development to emotional social development to intellectual development, and many different resources, so that the methods are diverse, because children have unique learning styles and they rotate through learning styles because they're developing. So as far as being auditory learner, kinesthetic learner, visual learner, a combination, when one of those might be a hindrance and they have kind of processing issues with one of those, there's so much going on for children, and it can shift and change. So when you provide a diverse spread of ways of learning and what to learn, that's so great, because now they can use their inner compass. They can use their intuition, how to learn, when to learn, with who to learn, and that's so ideal. Not all parents like myself can be that involved and that resourceful. So my unschooling with my 2 kids is very collaborative. I don't force my kids to do anything they don't want to do, but we're in constant communication with, how's it going? And are you finding resources for this area of your life? How about this area of your life? And I introduce things, and, they sign up for classes, they don't. They have many days where they do whatever they want, and then they have days where we reflect and we're like, hey, I'm like, hey, how about some of this? You get me. So, but yeah, I definitely I didn't realize I was an unschooling mom until it was clearly pointed out to me that even though we follow curriculum, because my kids are bought into it, it's their choice. They have autonomy over their education and how they spend their time and what they do every day, that is very unschooly. So in my Unschool Classroom, my online classes, I attempt the same thing. I want your child to sense their autonomy and free will in what they engage in, but still stay present. So I've got tricks up my sleeve for that. And, I hope that this was helpful. I aspire to help as many parents as possible connect with one another in co-ops or pods or whatever you want to call it, friendships, so that you can support each other on this path. I aspire to be that light at the end of the tunnel for you as you have your kids in school and feel like you have no option. I always tell parents, keep an open mind. Maybe you can't homeschool, unschool, alternative school at this point. And so your child is following a curriculum online that they don't want to follow. Your child is in a public school or in a private school where they're forced to learn a bunch of stuff they don't want to learn, and it's not sitting right with you anymore or your child. Keep an open mind if you feel like there's no way you could ever change things. It might be a financial hindrance, philosophical, whatever, but things can change, and it's better late than never. Trust me, you can at least learn to let go quite a bit in their high school years, and that's vital. That's so important. So there's so many documentaries you can watch, videos on YouTube, TED Talks. I mean, the resources are endless, but you got to do the research to be comfortable, because this is not mainstream. It's outside of mainstream, which means we're not comfortable until we get comfortable, and that takes time and effort and research and then a little bit of trial and error maybe to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. But do it. It's so worth it. So I want to be able to connect parents together worldwide so you can find each other. I want to be able to provide affordable online classes that are educational and engaging and social and fun and interesting. And what else do I want to do? I want to be there for you. So I look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions or comments, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks for watching. Bye.